fear. Stand with us, or we will all perish.
Poison Spectral Helix Pathfinder is a great league starter if you're looking for a relaxing, juicy mapper. This build excels at content that has spammy damage everywhere on the screen, which makes it perfect to knock out 3 Maven invitations, those being Shaper Guardian, Elder Guardian, Hidden, farming Delirium with Beyond Juice maps so easily and so comfortably. It can do this because it's abusing 2 super broken mechanics that weren't nerfed this league in the patch notes. The first is one a lot of people are familiar with, which is Nightblade. To put it simply, this gives us a huge boost of avoidance from elusive effect, a lot of critical strike multiplier, and we'll turn that crit strike multiplier into damage over time multiplier with perfect agony. The second broken mechanic here is the combination of flagellant flasks combined with surgeon from Pathfinder. This combination is what allows us to comfortably farm Delirium, double Beyond, and even Hidden invitations on a budget. We'll talk about rolling flasks and breakpoints later, but how this works is very simple. We get hit, we get flask charges from being hit, our flasks get to full charges, and our flasks are used automatically with instilling orbs. And since we used a flask, we will recover 6% of our maximum life. This is incredible recovery, and combined with Pathfinder, it lets us be extremely tanky against tons of spammy content. The trick here is to make sure that we're using 20 charges on our flasks. So this is going to be things like Ruby, Topaz, Sapphire, and a Diamond flask. We want to have 5 charges on hit combined with 80% increased charges gained, or just 7 charges on hit with our default Pathfinder 40%, so that we only need 2 hits taken to trigger our flasks. The best part about this interaction is the fact that blocking a hit still counts as being hit, and avoiding the damage from a hit also still counts as being hit. So our elusive effect is actually just helping us avoid the damage. We're not avoiding the hit. We get a little breathing room here and there with our block and avoidance when we take hits, while still recovering our HP very quickly and, more importantly, automatically, not requiring any leeching, not requiring us to touch anything. It just happens all of the time, and it's amazing. The early gearing of this build is very generic. We'll scale our block with a block mod on our shield and chest during the budget version. We'll fill with suppression, life, stats, and res everywhere, and we run determination, defiance banner, getting at least 20k armor with molten shell. The moderate gear gets a bit more complicated, but I have a full crafting guide to ease you into it. And this moderate version will give us a lot more damage without compromising on our survivability anywhere, which is very nice. We'll be running Malevolence as well. You couldn't swap this out for Grace, but when you have a lot of evasion, you're evading hits, right? So you're not getting hit, and that could otherwise heal you, and you will be dealing less damage by dropping Malevolence as well. I didn't feel the need to run Grace, but if you want to, feel free. Pathfinder also gives us a ton of flask effect, which in turn lets us use triple elemental flasks to take a lot less elemental damage. Taste of Hate, which converts 21% of the physical we take into cold, which we have a resistance to and are also taking less damage. And this helps us cap our critical strike chance with a nice diamond flask and makes us nearly immune to curses with all that flask effect and a flask mod. So with the super basic gear and non-quality gems, you'll be able to cruise through your Atlas, killing all the lower level invitations with ease. Depending on how the new boss mechanics are, this build could easily farm them as well, or maybe not, and you'll have to sell the invitations as you get them. That's just something we'll have to wait and see. If the new bosses have a lot of huge, slow hits and a lot of degen everywhere, that is exactly what this build struggles against. Our recovery is tailor-made for eating tons and tons of hits, all on the screen, all at the same time, and healing those automatically. But against damage over time, we'll struggle since it's not a hit. These are the 2 main weaknesses of the build that you need to know about and understand so that you can think and plan around these. In the moderate version, or maybe even in the budget version, we can do small things like use a soul tether to get overleach, but in the end, we don't have a huge amount of regen and we won't have a huge amount of leech either. So that is somewhat of a stopgap, but not a complete solution, and it is one of the glaring weaknesses of this build. This makes the build very rough against the feared when you're on a super budget, and while Maven is doable on the lowest end, it would be a lot easier to get a few upgrades, get some quality levels on your gems, and get some nice damage mods on your gear before you try it to make it a lot easier on you, especially if you are a first-time Mavener. This build is also struggling against simulacrums. Although very, very spammy and great for our recovery, once all the monsters are dead and you have only Cassus remaining, all it takes are 2 wave 26 WAPs and you're down. How do we level this build? Well, we're going to use Poison Concoction, of course. Poison Concoction is a great leveling ability. You don't have to worry about weapon upgrades. There are no recipes to know or learn, nothing like that. You grab your life flask like you normally would and you just blast off with Plague Bearer and Shield Charge. We'll use Poison Concoction until we get a Wasp Nest and are able to respec our tree. We use Wasp Nest on Poison Helix because Wasp Nest is super busted for being a T4 unique. You get a lot of damage, a lot of accuracy, attack speed, critical strike chance. Like, it's literally just beautiful. It's perfect. It's the best claw. Good luck upgrading that to anything better reasonably. Now, don't worry about that tree respec. The number of regrets you'll need is going to line up with all the free ones you get leveling 14 if you grab that. So make sure you follow the leveling trees to a T. I assume most will be able to transition around level 80 or lower. Since Wasp Nest, while dropping only at level 60 and higher, it is a T4 unique, which makes it very, very, very common to drop. But if you do have problems getting Wasp Nest or transitioning, Poison Concoction is totally fine. All the gear is going to be exactly the same. It will work very well with Poison Concoction as well, and you'll have no issues at all if you need to wait even until your 85 pluses. All the gear and the gems are going to be the same. The only difference is your 6-link would be 4 green and 2 blue for Helix, but 5 green and 1 blue for Poison Concoction. So really a very small difference in colors. You can totally take this build and make it a Poison Concoction build as well. But personally, I prefer the playstyle of Helix because it has so much less wrist movements without the need to aim projectiles. I find this very valuable in a League starter, since this is the time I'll be playing the most, and Poison Concoction would irritate my wrist with the constant aiming around versus Helix just right-clicking and shield charging around the map. I also chose Helix because I really enjoy the playstyle, actually. Although some people seem to not like it, I think it's very comfortable. If you are playing Helix as a melee ability, I think that is where people are struggling. They might be trying to play it as range. But with this build, you kind of just get in there, you throw them out, and Helix has 250 damage effectiveness. That is pretty crazy for an ability that swirls around you, constantly ticking its damage, and sometimes even ticking its damage 2 or 3 times against the same monster, which makes it have crazy, crazy damage effectiveness for how much screen time it gets. For your one action, right? This thing is swirling constantly. When we're in these Delirium Beyond maps, this thing is hitting so many monsters all of the time. It is detached from us. We can leave it behind and it'll kill whatever's back there. It is fantastic, and especially so on a poison build. The only expensive part of running this build is going to be how many alterations you need to roll your flasks. So, how many will you need? You will need, on average, if you get item level 65 flasks, about 330 alterations if you settle for the bad tiers of those mods with 5 charges, which would be totally fine, since the important part is hitting 5 charges on all of your flasks so that you get all of that incredible recovery while you're mapping. If you get higher item level flasks, you can settle for higher tier mods. You wouldn't really be settling then, but you can also enable chance to get Flagellant, which is the 7 charges when you're hit, which is very, very good. Now, the 5 charges is good enough if you get some charge gain on your belt and take a few extra nodes on the tree. So, to put it very easily, if you have gain 5 charges, then you really want at least 15% flask charges gained on a belt, and you're going to want to take the replenishing remedies wheel for life flasks. Even though we're not using life flasks, this is one of the only other sources of flask charges gained and will help us hit 80% total charge gain modifier. Now you can see this easily by hovering over a flask in your own path of building, making sure that you check have you crit recently, because we are also taking another node called Careful Conservationist. Since we are a crit build, this helps us gain flask charges as well. These are the two only sources on the tree easily accessible to us as a Pathfinder that gives us flask charge. So you need at least 15 on a leather belt. Now, if there are a lot of these belts being bought up, maybe they're very in demand for one reason or another, or just unlucky in the market and whatnot. If you get in there early enough and you really want to have your flask set up, there is an option you can use, and it does save you a few points on the tree. You can use this shitty little belt called Feast Bind, which gives you 50% increased flask charges gained while using a flask. This is a rustic sash. It's got a little bit of life. It's got a little leech, some mana regen, but mainly you'd be using it for the 50 increased flask charges gained. Now you can swap this in for a crafted leather belt and whatnot, and doing so, you can drop those 3 replenishing remedies nodes, and you would only do this if you were doing 5 charges on all of your flasks. Anything less than 5 is not going to be enough to hit the 2 hit to a proc threshold, right? We want our flasks to proc every single time we take any 2 hits. Any hit of anything 2 times should proc our flasks. If you don't have 5 charges on all of your flasks and 80% charges, it's going to take 3 hits. So your recovery is much, much worse, right? You're adding 50% extra hits required to proc your flasks if you don't get all your flasks set up correctly, which is really, really bad, and you don't want to be in that situation. Now, when you get later on into the build, you can use Flagellants, which is 7 charges. You don't need any flask charges on a belt, flask charges gained on a belt, or anything from the replenishing remedies little cluster as well. You don't need any of that. All you'll need is Careful Conservationist, which is what you would want anyway, as this is very powerful for the flask effect, for the reduced charges used, and then of course for the charges gained, right? That's all we'll need. So that alone gives you 40%. So 40% of 7 is going to bring you up to 9 something. And then since we have reduced charges used, we only have 18 charges needed to proc our normally 20 charge flasks, right? And so once you hit 7, you can drop a lot of stuff, and that's really, really nice. But until that point, you're going to want to keep replenishing remedies, and you're going to want to have at least 15% on a belt. Now, if you get more on your belt, you can drop these nodes, right? But just remember, it's always going to be at least an extra 40% from your belt or from replenishing remedies on the tree when you're at 5 charges. Let's very, very quickly go over the play style that you'll have to use for single target situations like map bosses or bosses in general with this Spectral Helix build. So you'll notice we are using 2 types of totems, and that can be a little bit tricky if you don't understand this one thing. First, you're going to want to have multiple totems linked to Ancestral Protector and to Wither totems. So you need a 4-link, right? You need multiple totems, spell totem, then you need the spell Wither, which should be level 1. I messed up by making it level 14. And then Ancestral Protector, which gives us attack speed. Now, what you want to do first is put down your Ancestral Protector. It'll summon 2 of them, and then you'll summon your Wither totems. You'll have 2 of these. This will be enough totems to apply Wither, and you'll have that 1 totem out, that Ancestral Protector, giving you 20% more attack speed, which is incredibly powerful. So again, you do Ancestral Protector, then you do the Wither totems. This makes it so 2 Wither totems are out and 1 Ancestral Protector. The Wither totems, we needed an extra 1 so that we can apply max Wither stacks of 15 in conjunction with our Withering step. And then we just want an Ancestral Protector because it's dank. Okay, so you go bing bong. Okay, bing bong with the totems. Then you just hold left mouse button down, you hold right click down, then you press your focus button. Then, anytime you have Plague Bearer up, you'll click Plague Bearer as well. And that's it. You go bing bong, you're just holding down both mouse buttons. You have focus on whatever key you want, you press it whenever you can, and then you pop your Plague Bearer. That's literally it. Just bing bong, hold them down, focus. All right, overall, I think this is a very powerful juiced map farming build, since you'll have the exact recovery needed for beyond Delirium maps, as well as the mitigation to make those maps actually comfortable and level up in them, and not just corpse rushing death every single time a beyond monster flickers on top of you with an aura. While it can do some early level bosses on a budget, this is not a budget bosser and would require more currency than the very lowest to do more than the Shaper, Elder, and Hidden invitations, which is honestly a pretty great deal considering how smooth the mapping is. So things like Feared, things like Simulacrum, and even Maven are going to be a little bit of a struggle, but the Shaper Guardians are pretty easy, the Elder Guardians are very easy, and the Hidden is extremely easy on a very low budget. All of these should be doable, so long as you don't spurg roll them with a bunch of extra speed mods or damage mods and all that, right? Like, if you're doing your first ones, just do them for completion, do them white, and you'll be able to do them deathless. If you roll it any more difficult with damage mods, speed mods, anything, you'll be able to do them, but you're going to die a couple times, so just expect that going in. I would recommend this build to anyone who wants to farm new juicy Atlas passive strategies, no matter which ones, as this excels in everything mapping related, especially the highest peak of mapping, which is beyond plus Delirium. Anyways, thanks for watching, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the League Start.